we watched the Broncos play on Saturday against Bradford, and we feel that there's a handful in that current team that could hold their own in the Super League. So, I think our realistic sort of target for year one, if we're in the Super League next year, is sort of be on the fringe of the finals.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to our latest edition of the Back 10 podcast. You may realise that we're not in our usual home, and that's for a very, very, very special reason. You may have seen in the news this week around London Broncos, and we're delighted to be joined by two of the men who are spearheading part of that takeover. Grant Wechsel, and of course, the one and only Mr. Darren Lockyer. How are you guys?
Yeah, good. Actually, it's nice to be in Leeds and the sun's out. Been here many times before and it hasn't been, but yeah.
Well, you played your final game in the city of Leeds, Darren, so that's right.
Yeah,
straight back, straight here.
A lot of great memories here on the field. It was played, I reckon I had a dozen tours over here, would have played in Leeds about the same amount of times, but never here at Headingley.
Well, Gary reminded us of that last night, that you and Andrew Johns never played here. Yeah. Gary's got the history of the greatest players that have ever played at Leeds, and you're not on it.
No, well,
They had you above Andrew Johns on that list, though.
He just said that there was two very, very good rugby league players in his eyes that had never played, and I said, I know you saying that because you've already told me I haven't played here. So I said, I'm thinking, well, is the player is he before me or after me? He said he's before, and I thought Freddie, and then I said no. Andrew Johnson there. That was correct.
Well, look, guys, before we start, we'd just like you guys at home just to not forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can see all the latest from the news in the world of rugby league here at Back 10. Now, look, straight away, we'll just dive right into it, guys. We know your time is precious. London Broncos, why? And why now, really?
Well, you can start off, Grant.
Yeah, well, I think you would have seen a bit of press come out before we visited. I think the key message for us is London's missing in the game, right? So I think that people have thought that for a long time from a Super League point of view. But I think for us in Australia, for Rugby League to succeed as an international game, we need London too. We need, the two leagues to be strong. We've got all the Pacific nations coming on, making the international game stronger. So we see it as a great opportunity. London's one of the great cities of the world. It's a mecca for Aussies. Obviously, there's 100,000 Aussies living in London.
Yeah,
something like 70,000 Kiwis as well. So I think the connection and the opportunity between our experience in the NRL with Darren and then the opportunity over here, it's too good not to have a crack at.
And you got to see London, firsthand on Saturday. What were your initial thoughts of it?
Look, the stadium they're at Wimbledon there, we think. It holds about 10,000. Really impressive stadium. It was only renovated or built.
2020.
So it's a modern stadium, and we watched the guys play. They're a club that's struggled over the last couple of years on the field and off the field. And you can see that, but there's you can also sense there's a fair bit of character and spirit in the club at the moment. And when we watched the game. The thing that I always say to Grant, you get atmosphere when you play in Suncorp Stadium when you're playing at a state of origin, but when you come to England, a crowd of 10,000 people can create a great atmosphere too. I actually think this is probably the second favourite atmosphere that I've ever played in, playing over here in the UK. Yeah. Uh-huh. But I think there's a huge opportunity with London, but there's also a huge challenge and a lot of risk. But we're willing to, if we're successful in the purchase and successful getting back into the Super League, we want to do it right. We want to do it different.
Can you just give us the timeline of how we got to now in terms of this London bid? When did your interest start? When did you think, we're going to push forward with this? When did you get to a point of we're willing to go public with that?
Look, it's all moved very fast. Like we literally started to get involved around early July. So straight after the State of Origin series finished in Australia, and it came across our desk, and we'd built businesses together for 15 years. So Darren retired 2011, and we became business partners after that. And we've moved pretty quickly on other things before, and we thought it was a great opportunity. But initially, that was we'd look at it. The guys that got involved with the Dolphins bid and the Bears bids in Australia were advising Gary, so that's how we knew those guys, and that's how we got involved to look at it in the first place. But then us kind of jumping straight into it, getting something on paper with Gary, and then flying over here. It's all happened very fast.
And we're both entrepreneurial, but we're also, from my perspective, and I think Grant's in the same boat. I think he touched on it before, that London, like, I want rugby league to be the best version it can be across the globe. And I think London's a pretty big part of that. So this is an opportunity to rescue the club, but also at the same time help rugby league as a sport.
The London, you've done your research and you've seen that it's had its struggles, and it's moved here, there and everywhere, and it's been up and down the leagues, and obviously they're fairly low in the championship right now. Why do you think, from what you've learned, it has struggled to really become the powerhouse club that, let's be honest, I think the game of rugby league wants it, and probably to a degree needs it to be?
I think, well, our focus is really getting the business off the field right. I think that's probably been the issue in the past, that there hasn't been enough focus on getting that business off the field right. So we obviously high performance on the field is important, but we feel, given the experience through the NRL that I've got, we've got some consultants on board that have got a lot of experience in building businesses around football clubs in Australia. They can bring that expertise over here and just do it. The other thing, I think you can't, when you're in London, you can't think the way the northern clubs think. You need to think differently, and that's our approach. London's a different market, and we're going to tailor our approach to that market.
Okay, so look, have you had any indication as of yet? Are London Broncos going to be in the Super League, or have they been told that you have to prove your worth in the Championship? How are you going to go about it?
We've registered to bid, so we're bidding for a spot for 2026. So we decided with Gary as a collective that the best thing we can do is go full out and try and get into 2026. If we don't, we've already committed to buying the club and partnering with Gary, so we'll go through the Championship. But given the time frame, given the kind of key people we think we can get involved, and the interest in really top talent wanting to come to London, because London's a pretty attractive place to go for Australian players too. When you look at the 10 you can bring in internationally, the marquees, pretty popular with the wives wanting to come to London. There's a lot of factors that I think, and obviously Darren's involvement makes a huge difference too. So I think there's a set of unique factors there that we could build a squad super fast that you normally wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, and that's one of my sort of immediate questions, concerns is that with the expansion, that clubs don't know as of yet who's going to be in. Those clubs are going to have to very quickly then build the roster. We've already seen a couple of occasions this year in the Super League, the lower end clubs being huge blowouts. It's not a good one for the game.
Correct.
Concerns from many fans, guys, is that, if London were to come up, how confident, you've already touched on it there, how confident would you be at landing your whole shopping list? And who is on that shopping list, if you can share?
Well, I think realistically, if we are in the Super League and we get, cracking on building a roster, I mean, we're already talking to people now because we're running that in parallel. So, if we get the coach who's already committed, subject to being in the Super League, who's, an ex-NRL coach,
It's been rumoured Jason DeBiggshoot, yeah.
So he's been our target.
Right.
So who's got plenty of experience over here as a player, coach. He got South Sydney to a prelim before he had a difficult year, and so he's been sort of sitting there, I guess, on the bench for a little while, and now he's got a potential opportunity with us.
If that does go ahead, he really wants to roll up the sleeves. So he's really keen to get involved, and he's been asked to come back a few times to clubs over here, but London would be that challenge to.
Does he feel he's got a point to prove?
Yeah, I think he's excited about trying to set something up in London.
Without a doubt, I think so. And the other key part to this is getting our club captain, and so we're looking at an experienced player from the NRL to come over here, and he might only play 1 or 2 years, but I think it sets. He's got a great, I guess the thing we're looking for is leadership.
Yeah.
And if we get those two appointments right, then we think we can build a roster out pretty quick. We watched the Broncos play on Saturday against Bradford, and we feel that there's a handful in that current team that could hold their own in the Super League. So, I think our realistic sort of target for year one, if we're in the Super League next year, is sort of be on the fringe of the finals.
If just on the player front, and I know it'd be too soon to name names, but the sort of player you're looking for as your club captain, are we talking like Backpage, Australia?
I think it'd be Backpage News in the Telegraph or something like that in Sydney if we land the captain that we're looking for. And then I think there's also a lot of fairly kind of current NRL talent that could fall in behind that as well. So yeah, it's too soon for us to say that, and it's really overlapping with this whole bid process.
We're getting that level of interest from big.
I mean, how important as well is it to recruit the right type of player, not just a guy that's, finishing his career and wants to come over for a holiday, maybe a bit of a different mindset. You're talking about pushing for finals. Well, you kind of need the right, it's all well and good bringing a player over with a big name.
Well, you got to get the balance right. You've got to set the culture and the leadership, and that's obviously it starts with the captain, but then you build out the roster around them, and you got to look at, Jason Dimitrio's already got a firm view on what he needs in a Super League. He understands Super League's different to the NRL, so he's got his own thoughts around what he needs to do in terms of picking certain players in certain positions. And we won't go into what those are, but yeah, we're not sort of we've got to get the balance right. You got to balance the leadership experience. You got to bring in youth.
Mm-hmm.
Speed, strength, size, all that gets taken into consideration.
But I think the general view of the excitement of people about London is based on a new London with Darren and with these key people involved, because it is almost like a new franchise. You got the history there, you got the name, but with Gary taking over, obviously David's history there in the past, it is almost like a new opportunity. There were multiple coaches that were interested in coming, NRL level coaches as a start, and then when you talk to the players, it's been a really positive response from just early feelers into who those people would be.
You mentioned there the past. You mentioned Davy Hughes. We've also had Richard Branson as well. Going way back 96. What's different then about this takeover than what we've had in previous times? Because the games have been moved around. London's had a different home. It's been in Barnet, it's been in Fulham, it's been Queen Park Rangers, it's been everywhere there, and it's never really found its true home. Do you guys see where they are now as being the true home, or is there still a lot of work to be done in researching and around where's the best place to play for the Broncos?
Oh, we're committed to stay at AFC Wimbledon's ground for next year, and I think for the short term, because Darren touched on it before about the atmosphere in the UK at games. I think you get 9,000-10,000 people in that stadium, and you build an atmosphere, and you make it a day out in London. Like, we're going to do a lot of work on match day experience stuff too, because we all know that London is not traditionally a rugby league town. We get that, the background of rugby union and rugby league. We're not naive to that. But I think there is a good pocket of rugby league fans there from the north who are based in London. There's all the Australians and New Zealanders we talked about activating, but then there's actually just that general group of younger people in London who want to have a good night out or a good afternoon out, who love their sport, some live entertainment, that get that match day experience right, big corporate sponsors, and just make the whole thing come together.
I think you have to crawl before you walk and walk before you run. And I think the stadium that they're at the moment is perfect for where the club's at. Mm-hmm. And our vision is to get enough members to start selling that ground out, every time we play at home. And if we outgrow that stadium, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, Just moving on ahead here now, we see the NRL expanding again, and there's rumours it's going to go on again as well, isn't it? Up to 20 teams, I think they're trying to target. Is expansion, is it the main thing that needs to happen now in the Super League? We're at 12 at the moment. We're allegedly rumoured to go to 14, providing everyone meets the criteria, and there is a possibility where it may just stay at 12 for next season. Is expansion the way forward?
Well, I think Peleli's been really strong in expansion in Australia, because it creates, so he's gone to Perth, he's gone to PNG, and so it creates a pathway for those communities or those areas where those elite clubs are to get more participation playing our sport. So that's why he's gone to those two particular areas. Or PNG, obviously, they already play a lot of rugby league, but in terms of getting them coached and get them to a level where they can compete on the best stage of the NRL, that's why he's gone there. But I think it's not expansion's one thing. I think the biggest factor is distributing the talent across the 14, if it's going to be 14 teams, evenly. Mm-hmm. So people go, is there enough talent out there to warrant expansion? Well, I don't think it's so much about that. You got to be able to distribute the talent amongst the competition evenly, and then you'll get an even competition. That's what people want to watch.
Over here, though, it's fair to say we've only ever had 4 winners. Yeah, Bradford, Leeds, St Helens, Wigan.
So I think there's a potential flaw in how the talent is distributed.
So what would you like to see happen then in terms of...
I don't know the answer,
right? Okay.
But I just know that whether it's a draft or there's some sort of other ways that they can do it. Because what ends up happening is obviously the financial clubs, they've got advantage because they can just keep buying marquee players, and so the bottom clubs never. So you got to find a way to sprinkle the talent that's up in these top clubs down to the bottom clubs.
And that was something we touched on with Matt Ellis last week, wasn't it? Who agreed entirely with what you've just said there. So maybe there is a space for a draft system in the future. Yeah. Who knows?
The perfect outcome is every fan that goes to a game, any game, they both think that team's a chance of winning.
Oh yeah, without doubt. Yeah. Before the ball's kicked, you don't really know. I mean, look what many people tipped where they tipped Canberra this year. And down at the bottom, and then now look what they're doing. Yeah. So we want to get it to a place where you don't know and that's the excitement as a fan, isn't it? To invest and buy your season ticket into something.
I think what's interesting, just going back slightly to 14 teams, the clubs that we're looking at coming in potentially, the front runners. There's Bradford, who many think are going to get in directly on that top 12, but then it sort of looks like yourselves, York and Toulouse, who are all on the new regions, really. Even York's kind of out of the heartland area. You'll know a little bit about those guys, I'm assuming. Are you confident that from an IMG perspective, you're going to be above them, you're going to be able to get to where you need to be points-wise so that you get first crack at being in Super League?
Well, I think the RFL have put out some stuff about the 14 teams. So it's obviously the IMG grading system is the standard for the 12 teams, and then for the 13 and 14, there's going to be this additional criteria about financial forecasting and on-field capability and things. So we're just going to put our best bid forward on that basis, and then if we're successful with those things on the field in the coming years and off the field commercially, there's no doubt that we're going to have to, meet that grading system long term, and we're confident we'll do it.
Well, I think the biggest issue for London is obviously historical.
That's what,
right? So we're articulating what we're going to do moving forward. Our forecasts around the financials and how we're going to achieve all the milestones we've set out to do. So that'll be important, but at the same time, we understand that the historical London Broncos at the moment, it doesn't read well.
No, that was what I was going to say, because the financial forecasting is great, and I know that you have all your plans, but if you look at the history, they're going to go, this isn't sustainable what it has been.
Sustainability is a great word, because we're looking at this as a long-term investment, right? So we're effectively underwriting the club to go through a period of growth to make sure that they are sustainable on and off the field with the grading system they have. So it is, I touched on it earlier, it's more like a new bid almost, using the Broncos' history, obviously Gary standing in the game, but there's so much of it is what are we going to do with a new club that just wasn't done at all.
And I'm assuming that's why it's not Super League or bust for you guys next year. Like, you talk about long-term planning, it's if you don't get it next year, it's not the be-all and end-all.
No, we'd still proceed. It just means we give us more time, obviously, to build a roster.
Sure.
But at the same time, there might be players that were willing to come over if it was Super League, but they might change their mind.
Would that not be a bad thing, though? A bit more time. It all seems very rushed, doesn't it? If you take a step back, and I'm not, you guys have been involved in discussions way back, I assume, but everything else, again, to get everything up and running, to change from being 10th in the Championship to then in Super League come pre-season, it would a bit more time not be a bad thing in the long run to get you to where you want to be?
Yeah, possibly.
I think either option is doable, but the momentum we've got to go for a Super League bid and the type of people we can get across, they won't come and do a year of the Championship, many of them, right? Yeah. So you've got an opportunity to go 100% all out. And when we told Gary, I said, I'm going to come and base myself here for 100 days through the process. And, we're the ones we've engaged marquee sponsors, all this stuff in the background already, right? So that's all going to go into our bid. So it's not like we're coming and saying, hey, we'll do our best. We're the new owners and we've got Darren Lockyer. We're coming in with a business plan that is A, can be ready for next season, B, we can fund through the long term and make London what everyone wants it to be, which you talked about earlier, which is that successful club that's been missing.
Could I just ask you, just with your business heads on, when you look at Super League as a competition, and I suppose Rugby League over here, what do you see as the strengths, but I suppose more the issues, the challenges that are stopping it from being the big sport that we all are desperate for it to be over here?
Look, a lot of it comes down to funding, right? So I think, but back in Australia, the current NRL headquarters gives every club all the money they pay to their players, and then they get an extra $3 million to start. So that's a huge plus, right?
Yeah.
So and all that money that all these clubs now are making out of profit, they can just reinvest back into their club and they just keep growing and getting bigger. And so I think that's the biggest thing here for the Super League is getting a competition that there's getting eyeballs watching it, and then get some competitive tension in the broadcast deal, and try and get that funding. So all these clubs that we're talking about, you're giving them. They're starting from scratch. They don't have to sort of, bankroll player payments and bankroll. That's probably I see the biggest opportunity is getting the broadcast deal right, so that all the clubs are financially stable.
And a strong London obviously helps with that too, right? When you go into the TV deal next time, there's a strong London in there. I think that works. And I think the other thing is the expansion outside of, I've been schooled on the M62 and where all the clubs are.
We'll travel that a lot.
Yeah, and great tradition and full respect, right? What Gary's done here and what, we've went through the history of it yesterday is fantastic. But for the game to expand in London where it hasn't worked, but we're confident it can work, and other areas that are new to the game, that's going to help with eyeballs, viewership, attendance, participation, broadcast deals. That's got to be good for the game. And I mean, you guys also are up against football is just so dominant in the UK too, right? So, getting those new areas and new eyes on the game, younger fans, like we talk about the NRL now, some of the stuff he's doing is a bit odd, but Reece Walsh and those younger players brought, you should, at the Broncos games now, there's just so many young girls and young fans that weren't there before. So just trying to get some new demographic into the game.
That is, without doubt, has to be the way forward, doesn't it? The next generation, bringing them into the game in whatever way will ultimately help the game grow for future as well.
Well, we once was just clubs connecting to fans. It's now players connecting to fans through social media, right? So it's just the way things are, and you have to adapt and evolve as a club to connect with that younger generation.
Yeah, and we talked about the stuff there off the field, but Darren, I want to get your view of Super League from an on-the-field perspective. We're seeing now more than ever a lot of English talent going over to the NRL. The last two World Club Challenges have been won by the Super League. Do you see the potential for that, for the gap between the NRL and the Super League? Is it as far and as wide as how it's maybe deemed in Australia? Because I think when you look at the current England squad that's on paper, that could challenge the Aussies for sure, if not get over them.
No, I agree with you there. I think NRL's biggest advantage is state of origin. So our best players play at that level, which I think is the toughest test as a rugby league player. So the fact that they get to play that, it just gets them prepared for, those really tough, big games like that's going to happen at Wembley, and is it Everton?
Everton,
and then here for game 3.
We're coming over for the Wembley test, and we won't be walking into that, super confident. We'll be on the edge of our seats that the Aussies can get up. Yeah,
I think one of the things Super League was always never really had to focus on the wrestle in the game. That's the one thing the NRL teams do really well, and I think I've just watching the London Broncos the other day and watching Bradford. It was a distinct difference from the last time I watched Super League live was the attention around the wrestle, because I think it's a big. The Melbourne mantra was always, when we got the footy, we want to speed the game up, and when we don't, we want to slow the game down, right? Yeah. And I think Super League's probably doing that a bit better than what they were doing 5 years ago.
Just before we get into the Ashes, I just wanted to ask a bit around broadcast, and there's been a lot of talk about the NRL and Super League and the NRL potentially investing or getting more hands-on potentially with Super League. What do you, from where you guys are coming from and investing in potentially a Super League club, certainly a UK club, are you for that? Are you against it? What do you think?
Maybe not the investment side of things, but I think they can collaborate a lot more so that they get a better deal for the game globally.
Yeah.
So that means more money for Super League, more money for NRL. So if Peter and Nigel can work together and understand the levers they can pull to get the best outcome for rugby league, then I think that's, again, more funding going into the clubs means they're going to be more profitable and they can reinvest more money back into the game.
Yeah, excuse me ignorance on this, I don't know how close you guys are with Peter Volandis, but a lot of the talk over here is that Peter and Nigel don't really have a relationship. There's not much of an appetite to do that. Is that something that you might go back and say, look, there's something to do here. This is worth trying to make a working relationship with.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that, now that being over here and understanding what we're going through with this bid, I do think for the bigger picture, for the benefit of rugby league across, the globe, that, Australia and England working together can only be a good thing. Except for when they're playing each other on the Ashes.
Yeah. Of course, we want to get the international game to a place. We're seeing now the strengthening of Samoa, Fiji, Tonga. You talked about the start of the season, getting the place like the NRL where realistically, the whole host of teams can win it. It'd be great to get the international game to that as well, wouldn't it? Before a World Cup's kicked off, how many teams now have we genuinely... You've gone to the days, I think, where it was just Australia, New Zealand, maybe England. We've now got more emerging teams that are strengthening. Do you think a strong international game is the way forward, and therefore then having the NRL helping out the Super League would be a good thing?
Well, I've always felt that's the last frontier, is, particularly from an Australian perspective, our club, that their domestic competition is great. We've obviously got State of Origin, which is huge. But the international game has always floundered to some extent because there hasn't been enough countries that could potentially win a World Cup, right? So there was the big three. There was Australia, New Zealand, England, and now the Pacific nations. They're obviously very competitive, which is great for the game. Yeah. And I think it's just so good to see the Ashes back because that's what Origin's about. It's rivalry, and it's so popular. The Ashes, it's built on rivalry and it's built on tribalism. So to see it back, and I've heard the ticket sales are very good here, which is great to see, and that's only going to help. Again, more money coming into the game that can be reinvested.
Well, we've been talking during this trip about the cricket even. Like they can't start the next Ashes quick enough, right? The rivalry is so strong. So if we can bring that back to rugby league, it's going to be fantastic.
Well, staying with the Ashes, guys, look, we've heard, we've heard a lot of our thoughts over here for England, who should be playing and who should be picked and stuff. We've not really heard too much from Australia. I know they've left their coaching staff till later on. Kevin Walters been announced, but. Have you guys heard any? Has there been any sort of talk about it, or is it literally all just on the NRL?
Well, I guess the clubs only just started to drop out of the competition now. There's the last round played last week, so what normally happens is a train-on squad will be announced, based on those clubs that have dropped out. So you'll start seeing some names pop up now. But look, I think I reckon there'll be a lot of Australian players that want to be involved because it's the Ashes. Get to play at Wembley, get to play here. The new stadium at Everton. So, look, whatever team we bring over, it's always going to be full of talent. Yeah. But I think, to your point earlier, I think England's team's going to look pretty good too.
Well, we've got plenty of competition, particularly in the halves now, haven't we? Mikey Lewis, George Williams, Jake Connor. Jake Connor was left out of Sean Wayne's original squad, but he's arguably been the man of steel this season. So will he come into the fore?
There's probably three playing in the NRL that come to mind that I think would be huge for you guys. Would be Herbie Farnworth, AJ Brimson, if he gets a start. I think he's pretty, and then Victor Radley.
Yeah.
Here's a question. So we know the big names in the NRL, your Clearys and your Latrells, but for Super League fans who don't watch a lot of NRL, who are the ones who are maybe going to go under the radar or going to play for the Kangaroos that we should be worried about?
So under the radar, probably there's Tom Dearden, he was the Wally Lewis medal in State of Origin. So he's not really under the radar, but probably for a lot of people here in England, probably haven't seen him play too much over here. I guess whoever goes deep into the finals, there's always one or two bolters that comes out of a grand final. I'm not sure who's going to play in the grand final. I'm obviously a Broncos man, and they're starting to flex their muscles at the right time. But I don't know. Have you got any thoughts on any?
Well, I know Ricky Stewart was saying that
Ethan Strange.
Ethan Strange was saying was a bolter, or he said if he doesn't play for Australia this year, he will soon. So potentially, you're right. If someone like Canberra goes to a grand final, maybe there's some bolters out of that because they've had an incredible season.
Yeah.
Look, as well, everything you achieved in your career, we'd need another 40 minutes to rattle it off. The World Club Challenge, there was one trophy that you didn't get your hands a hold of. Is that right? I'm sure it doesn't keep you up at night, Darren. But, I mean, we saw what Wigan did and we saw what St Helens did down in Penrith. How important do you feel that is to have that as a regular fixture? You talk about intensifying and creating that rivalry. Is the World Club Challenge, is it bigger for us English people as it is the Aussies?
Look, I would, to be honest, I think it probably is, yeah. But I've always felt like the consistency around that particular concept, we need to go back to, my idea, just to be, is why don't we play that game in Vegas?
For sure.
Like, I just think that brings, yeah, because just leave it there.
Wait a few years, London Broncos versus.
You heard it here first.
That'll be superb.
Because I always thought, okay, because a lot of the times it gets a little bit diluted because the two teams that play it isn't the same teams. There's maybe 4 or 5 players that have left the respective teams. So it's a little bit not the same. So I always thought, well, when the 2 seasons are finished, why don't you meet on neutral ground, like with Hong Kong or something, and get fans to travel from both countries to play the World Club Challenge in neutral ground, right? Make it a thing like a Super Bowl, but but that's the concept. But with international football in there, it might be a bit tricky. But if we're going to do it the following year, why don't we do it in Vegas?
I agree. I suppose the challenge is a bit. Let's say Hull KR are going next year. If they won the grand final and they were in the Super League match, you've got a little bit of a logistical issue there. But I think surely you can work around it. I think Vegas just seems perfect for it.
Yeah.
For a World Cup Challenge. And the other thing, I don't know if you know this, but next year, Super League are really keen for the World Cup Challenge of the 2026 season to be played before the World Cup. The English team to go to Australia and play it before the World Cup, which I don't know if it'll come off, but I think I like that idea.
So I think that's what I was talking about, the inconsistency with it. If you're chopping and changing and moving around all the time, it loses its appeal. Yeah. So it's a bit like, okay, where the grand final, the championship's going to be played at every year. Same in Australia. The good to get to a point where we know where the World Cup Challenge is going to be played every year. Where the best of Super League meets the best of the NRL, and that's where it's played at.
Can I just ask one final question? I think you're going to have to wrap up. Yeah. Just on your World Cup Challenge memories, particularly the Saints game. It was at the Reebok in Bolton. It's such a memorable game and the awesome game of Super League from sports. So, what were your memories of that? Because it was one of the most iconic commentary lines from our guys was when you dropped the ball in from a kickoff and they're like, he is human. So it's still remembered to this day. I just wondered what your memories of that particular game were.
I think it snowed that night. I remember that, yeah. I think Darius Boyd, he played that night. Yeah, look, it was just, as I said, that the atmosphere that the British fans can create, it's second to none, I said it before. The only time in my eyes it's ever been eclipsed for me as a player was when I played for Queensland at Suncorp. But the atmosphere over here, and once the singing happens and you guys get on top, it's very hard to stop you. Yeah. So, one of those things that just I could never tick that box.
Well, look, there's no doubt about it. They're going to need all the help from those singing fans come the Ashes at Wembley in Game 1. Do you think... Go on, give us your prediction, Darren. Who wins the Ashes and what will the series result look like?
Just be careful now because you've got an English audience.
Yeah.
He's still in Australia.
He's not.
I think we'll get to a decider here.
That would be amazing.
This will be a decider.
That would be amazing because I can't think of the last time a rugby league game in this country where it would have been you couldn't get a ticket and you wish you had got one. If that is the case, if it's 1-1 and it would be absolutely amazing. Look, guys, I know you've got a busy schedule ahead, so I want to thank you, both of you, for coming on, joining us, telling us everything about London Broncos, and who knows what the future holds for them. Certainly very, very exciting from Grant and Darren's point of view. Again, we are out of time. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and stay tuned to everything that's going on here at All Out Rugby League. Bye-bye for now.